Hello, it's Neil Getz here, and we're at Tyrebagger, and I guess it's a kind of Christmas special because it's December the 24th, Christmas Day tomorrow, and the sun's already just heading for his bed. A wee panoramic view around Aberdeen. So we'll just stand in front of the Recumbent and we'll get a wee bit lie of the land. So Recumbent faces south, and the sun's just going down, as I say. We're on top of a rise, a fairly big hill, and down here is the airport. Found a new parking spot which I'll update the blog with. It's a fairly steep climb up, although it's only a kilometre walk. It's a fairly steep climb up, and discovered it can be a little bit of a muddy trail, but it's probably the most direct. Come round to the middle or the outside, and we can see just across the circle that although we're on top of a bit of a hill, there's hills in the distance here, just here, rising up and down, and then that's the nature bridge for the bypass. You can walk in the woods and come across that nature bridge, no bother, to the circle. There's another access way. But yeah, we'll have a wee look around. The biggest modification that's been done to the circle over the last couple of years I've seen was because the recumbent's fallen back and is held from kind of collapsing completely. Underneath had been used for centuries, or at least decades, as a kind of hide or a bonfire, like a fireplace, and I have been getting quite a bit of damage on the inside face. So for the last year, maybe even 18 months, it's all been blocked up. So and fixed in place type of thing. So that's a fairly recent-ish addition. Apart from that, the circle pretty much is, if you look up Great Crowns of Stone, which is a recommended document to look up and read, it's free. If you just Google it, their PDF's free. It's a really handy reference. 15 years old now maybe, but it's really handy for reading up on what the kind of archaeologists from like 100 years ago thought of the sites and what they dug up and what they excavated. So we've got 11 stones. We've got the 3 recumbent stones, and we've got 8 others. So, and they're all standing, and which makes it a pretty good circle to visit, actually. I mean, maybe not in the beginning of winter or in winter, maybe summer would be the ideal kind of time to be visiting it, but because it's not got its own car park, and because it's not like really accessible and that you can just walk to it for like a couple hundred yards, you're speaking about a good kilometre up a steep farm track. You usually have the place to yourself, so it's quite secluded from that kind of point of view. The only thing you can really hear is the bypass behind me. So it is a fairly impressive circle. This is just a quick run through because I've done videos before, but the audio has not been that great, so I've got myself a new mic, so that hopefully helps. But the circle was apparently used as a cattle pen at one point, and apparently the gates were between stone 1 and 11, and that might explain why the centre is so well, it's quite dipped here. But anyway, standing in the middle, looking south, right across the recumbent. It's quite a nice view, that, with the sun going down there. The convention is, just so everybody can speak about the same kind of numbers of stones, the convention always is, kind of come out the shadow, as we start with the recumbent setting and the west flanker. So this is south, facing south, so that'll be the west flanker, is always number 1. Recumbent's always number 2, east flanker's number 3, and so on. depending on what stones are standing. So looking at stone 1, it's a pretty significant flanker, quite well edged. I mean, there is the more and more of the recumbent stone circles I go and see, the less convinced I am about what they're all about. Really interesting. It's what's really good about being in a group of people that are interested about them, is you can throw around ideas. So I was convinced of the conventional idea that stones were quarried somewhere and dragged and or sledged across miles to get to these sites. Douglas kind of said, well, what about, it's after the Ice Age, there's going to be a lot of stones and rock just lying around the countryside that have been just dumped by the sheets of ice. And it might have been more like just rearranging the furniture rather than anything else. So there's a kind of couple of schools of thought. Shaped or natural. Again, there could have been the initial community that placed them, could have just left them as rough as they found them, and a later community that came along afterwards discovered the site, adopted it, started to shape them. Hard to tell, especially after 5,000 years of a site being here and being weathered and such. So, but anyway, it's a pretty significant. I'll stand up next to it. I'm a short guy, so it's towering above my head anyway. It's a pretty significant flanker in its own right. Then we've got stone number 2, which is a wee bit more recumbent than most recumbents. It's kind of lying back in itself. There's a little bit of graffiti here. There's a jai being inscribed by somebody who didn't know really what they were doing. But if it was upright and probably it wouldn't just be upright, it might be embedded maybe by a good 20 or 30% of its height. It would probably be up about maybe, 1.8 maybe meters tall here. And stone number 3, quite pointed compared to number 1 with its very square top, and number 3 is kind of more diamond shaped. You can read a lot into shapes and alignments. My personal view is you can't go 5,000 years without some damage. I mean, if the circle was used as the reports claim of being a cattle pen, there's a good chance that a couple of stones have been re-erected or pushed back up or had some kind of damage done to them, especially by trees. A lot of circles have been surrounded and even been the centre's been growing trees within them. All it needs is, we've seen by just the past few years of storms where how much damage a fallen tree can make. Not so much the tree itself falling, but the uprooting of them would easily topple stones or damage them. So I personally don't read too much into the shapes of them, and I certainly don't read too much into the alignment of them. I'm just surprised that they're still here after all this time. So that's the 3 recumbent stone circles, and you can see the angle that this recumbent is lying back at. And again, that kind of suggests to me that something's happened to this stone for it to have lost its socket and fallen back so much, whether that's ground erosion or whatever. But it kind of tells a story. It's a bit like forensics. You can't just take the circle as this is how it's always looked. Well, I can't anyway. I kind of got to piece all the evidence back as far as the kind of documentations is concerned, and hearsay and such. So, stone number 3 is it's quite a tall stone in its own right. I mean, we are talking probably 2.2 maybe. Again, quite a bit of quartz in there. Love a bit of quartz. A lovely stone. Number 4. Coming along the outside just to get a bit of perspective, a bit of kind of triangular one. a flat facing on the inside. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A slab-like stone, a kind of like a gravestone type, and maybe a little bit of repair done there. It looks like had a crack all the way through, so it could have been cemented back on top of itself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Stone 7. This is kind of up to my, just up to my chest, I guess. Stone 8, coming to the outside of the circle. It's quite embedded in the embankment, and that might be a bit of the central section. You can see the kind of curbstones of what would have been the cairn in the middle, which has all been robbed. Cairn stone's just been the ideal size of stone to make a dike, so there's lots of stone dikes around here to make field boundaries, so it's no surprising that that's disappeared, probably well before it was used as a cattle pen. But it has kind of eroded the bottom of the stone section, but this stone in particular is well embedded into the roundel. Now the roundel, like, there's a few stone circles that have a little boundary round about them, and that's because essentially you've got decades and centuries of fields being ploughed and worked, which essentially very, very, very slowly but surely redistributes the level. So you've got a level here that's not been touched for, well, 5,000 years maybe, or maybe even longer. But this level down in the field has been ploughed and redistributed and such over the years. So that's how it's a little bit lower. And the reason for the roundel is to stop earth just basically falling into the field, which would eventually erode the stones, and the stones would have fallen into the field as well. So there are a few stone circles like that. East of Cortes has got one. As an example. And number 9, right on the edge of the field here, the circle here. It's if I stand on the inside, it's up to my head height here, a bit triangular-ish. So a wee bit more triangular. A sturdy stone for sure. Number 10 is getting a little bit taller, and that's again the kind of thing with recumbent stone circles. Generally, not always, but generally, the flankers are the tallest stones. You can see with number 1 and 3 and 4, they're quite tall stones. 11, maybe droop down. And to the back of the circle, they're a little bit shorter. So they tend to grade from the recumbent sitting back to the lower one at the back. Number 10, it's a monster of a stone, because you can tell there's something, it looks like it's been a little bit more than, there's a whole chunk potentially missing here of the stone. Maybe been smacked by something, a tree or some damage. Number 11 always looks a bit precarious, but and I'm always a bit concerned it'll fall, but when you look at the documentation and the sketches, it's been at this angle for a couple hundred years, so there's probably no much chance of it falling. So a quick run through, hopefully with a better sound track than my last one. But I thought it was come up, since it was relatively nice weather, to one of my favourite circles in Aberdeenshire. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks.